Great. Okay, so thanks, Hyan. Once again, we did an adequacy study, and incidentally, I was involved I helped direct the adequacy study that was done for Getting Down to Facts 1, which was 10, 11 years ago. As with any adequacy study, the sort of key question is, what does it cost to provide some opportunity to all students, regardless of their circumstances? Here, you have to have a goal. So in California, we really pegged it to the standards that have been set by the State Board of Education, and also kind of offered by California Department of Education. And so what we did was we used what's called a professional judgment approach, and we solicited nominations for expert educators from all over the state to come and participate in 3-day workshops. And what we did is we would group these professional educators into comprehensive panels. So each panel would have a superintendent, 3 principals, 1 at each schooling level, elementary, middle, and high school, 3 teachers, 1 at each schooling level, a specialist in English learner education, a specialist in special education, and a specialist in early childhood. And then to round it all out, we would have a school business officer as well on there. So we would have these panels come in, and we provide them a goal statement. And the goal statement basically stipulates all of the information that is in the vision and the mission statement, but then also it had all of the California standards and the accountability system, the 5x5 dashboard. And the idea there was the goal was to make sure that all schools would be in either the blue or the green. And then with this goal in mind, we would provide them with a series of exercises. And the exercises basically said, you have to design programs that are going to meet this goal at a minimum cost. And you're going to have to do it for school prototypes that represent typical schools that have different levels of needs along the lines of students who are socioeconomically disadvantaged, EL, special education. And also we had exercises for small schools to recognize that there are diseconomies of scale, particularly in our more rural communities. As I said, the panels come in and they do these exercises, and they have to really, from the ground up, develop a program in narrative form. So they have to describe what the offerings are going to be for the general education population, and then what are the supports that are going to be offered for the additional populations of special needs, such as socioeconomically disadvantaged, EL, special education. With this, they also have to specify the resources, that is the staff and non-personnel resources that they use. So what we do as researchers is we cost out each of these prototypical schools that have been designed to meet the goals at a minimum cost. And then we do some fairly simple analysis to figure out how the cost of an adequate education varies according to these needs. And we use these models to project it for all schools in California. That's in a nutshell what the methodology is. And probably I've used 5 minutes already. Here are our key findings. As one might expect, in order to provide an adequate education to all students, regardless of their needs and circumstance, we're going to have to spend considerably more. In 2016-17, the state spent almost $70 billion, or $12,750 per student, to educate its public school students in K-12. When we estimated the adequate spending for the same year, it came to about $92 billion, or about $16,800 per student. So the additional cost here is about $22.1 billion annually, or about a 32% increase. Now, we obviously didn't stop there, because we wanted to understand how this additional spending might vary according to districts with different circumstances. So 2 of the cuts that we made was to really look at how this adequacy gap, that is the estimated gap between what we predicted as adequate and what they were actually spending. We wanted to know how this varied according to student poverty, and then also according to rurality. And we found that the gaps were substantially larger in the higher poverty districts, and also those that were located in the more rural communities. So I'm not going to go on too long. There's a lot in the paper. I mean, there's a lot of rich information in the report that talks about the decisions that the panelists made. So you can get some rich detail as to what the panels thought were very important components of the instructional programs that they suggested. But what I did want to say is, you know, the initial reaction may very well be that there's sticker shock here. That you know, spending 32% more is quite a bit more. However, it's really more reflective, at least in my view, that of how little we're spending relative to other states that, you know, we might aspire to be competing with. So here's a table for you, and in the first column, it's that $16,800, which is what our study suggests is necessary to spend on a per pupil basis in order to provide an adequate education. We compare these against northeastern states, and I guess I'll just start off with, you know, let's compare it against Massachusetts. It's most closely in line with what Massachusetts was currently or was spending in 2016-17. That is, it's just 2% lower, or conversely, actually, Massachusetts was spending 2% more. However, if we look at places like New York or, you know, Connecticut, New Jersey, you know, it ranges from about 16%, you know, they're spending 16% to 28% more. So, I think we have to take a sobering look at the degree to which we've been really underfunding our education system, and be realistic if we truly want to compete with some of these other states that often we hold in high regard, like Massachusetts. We have to step back and think about how are we going to build the political will to provide the funding that's necessary to provide an adequate education. The last thing that I just wanted to say here really quickly is we did not do anything to incorporate projected increases in the pension costs. So the $16,800 per pupil is that's as of 2016-17. So we could consider that a lower bound if you know, if we want to take into account that you know, we know that pension costs are going to rise, and a lot of that burden is going to be pushed on over to the to districts to support. So I think I'll end there. I've not been looking at the questions, but I'll tap some answers if there are any.